Hello, good Monday morning to you and everybody here. Welcome to today's Dojo. This is Victoria Lewis, and today's subject will be working remote versus in the office. So obviously this is geared towards agents today. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll kind of break it down some. There's agents who, some of us here have worked both in the office and remote. There's upsides, downsides to each one, right? And you just kind of have to, as an agent, find the best fit for you, whether it be exclusively remote, exclusively in the office, or maybe a hybrid of the two, right? You kind of have to figure that out. So let's talk about some first, I guess, the in-office benefits, right? So all of us are obviously here in the office, have experience with that. So Penny, go ahead and tell me, what are some benefits of working physically in the office as opposed to remote?
I think the amount of sort of pretty much instant help is huge. And even when you're dialing another call and you're waiting for someone to answer on your call, you can hear little bits and little snippets of conversation, and you can learn a lot of really good things. In some of the snippets, you can learn trends or something that you hadn't maybe been aware of previously on underwriting or on a certain company's applications, or, just you can overhear some amazing little bits of information that are so helpful. And then just being able to turn and ask your neighbor, about a certain plan, or for just having a second set of eyes sometimes on something you're working on can be so helpful.
Okay.
And I feel like it's a lot more support than when you're at home and you have to, message and wait for a response from however your help would be coming,
Yeah, you touched on several benefits there. Because,
Yeah.
just by simply having your ears open, you can hear other people's situations and what they're working through and how they're working through it, and working past objections just by keeping an ear out.
Yeah.
You're hearing all of these things, whether it be hearing some wise words from a tenured agent, how they're dealing with a client, or it could be something as simple as like, oh, maybe Brad just thought of something off the top of his head that would be helpful, and he's shouting it out to everyone, right?
Yeah.
So just in passing, simply by being physically present in the office, there's lots to be learned, right?
Yes,
is what
a
you're
lot.
saying, I think.
And I think, one of the things too is that you sometimes even just hear phrasing that maybe you had several sentences to say, but you can put it in one sentence and you just hadn't thought of saying it that way or whatever. And I mean, there's a lot of things I've learned or touched on that have been very helpful on calls, subsequent calls then, because of just the way a person says something, just the way they phrase it, or, I mean, exactly what objection they might be having that they're working through, but having more ideas for different ways to handle something, just puts more tools in your belt for yourself. Yeah,
exactly. And not only what somebody is saying to a client, but maybe their tonality, right? How they're saying it.
Yeah.
Some people speak to clients more aggressively, and sometimes they're successful or not. And some speak to them more in a lowered tone and a softer tone, and that works well for them. And you can kind of figure out, not that I'm saying you're being fake, but you kind of can find a good, what works for clients for them, and maybe find a middle ground in tone that works for you. And you can try out different tones and see how it works, how clients, accept it or reject that.
Yeah, just picking up on that. I mean, some clients, that aggressive, really outgoing, aggressive nature works just fine with them. They're happy with that. Sometimes you're doing that and you realize this person needs more quieter or something. I mean, but having been exposed to other people's tonality and, more quiet approach or whatever, then at
Mhm.
least you have something you can go, oh yes, this is how so-and-so, and then you can sort of back down and get to where you're having a match with that person.
Right.
And you can progress through the call where you might not have even thought of that had you not been exposed to other
Right.
people in the office,
Right.
and the way they talk to the people.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
I agree.
yeah.
And Kristen, so you've been here in the office, and so, for example, if you have a certain tone when you're speaking to a client and you're going to transfer them over to me to help close the sale, I can have heard your tone the entire time and try to match that to try to keep it on a nice, even playing field and keep the whatever kind of the mood it is or the pace. I can kind of try to keep that up because I've been able to hear you. So do you find that that's been helpful?
I do find that helpful, and also the support system here,
Mm-hmm.
rather than having to wait for help or whatever. Just having a lot of different resources and people to reach out to while in the office.
Yeah, sometimes it's a matter of just looking around to see who's free, who's not on the phone, who's close by you.
Yeah.
Or as opposed to if you were working remotely, you don't have that visual part of it. You just have to message and hope that
wait.
somebody's
Hope
for the
free
best.
or somebody sees it. You kind of
In time.
yeah. Although there can be a positive out where you're more self-reliant when you're working remotely, but it's a huge help. I know being able to visually see people and ask for help. I think it's a really good atmosphere for a newer agent like yourself. So yeah. And Mike, what would you say are some positive aspects of working physically in the office?
Well, I'll piggyback off of both. The support system here is amazing because you're my mentor, and I get to hear some of the closing tools that you use that are extremely effective. Also, you've taught me, to listen effectively when it comes to communicating with your guest on the phone, and then trying to overcome some obstacles there, so you get to hear everybody, their approach. And then the other thing there is leaving a good voicemail, where everybody has their own, either it's long-winded or condensed, whatever the case is. You hear everybody's input as far as, well, this block of time I'm going to go with this voicemail, and trying to create them to call back. But I believe being in the office gives you a lot more structure because, we're here at a time, and then we know what our day is going to be. So being here builds discipline. So versus, I would love to go remote, but I certainly don't have the discipline right now.
Right,
because
you have to know yourself.
Exactly. So right now, that would not be good for me because I'm not far along enough to execute all the things that we need to while we're, like we do when we're here, and especially being brand new to this industry. Going, okay, I need to problem solve. How do you problem solve? You got the resources here, and you can do that quickly and effectively. So, yeah, that definitely was why I'm here versus remote. So,
Right.
there you go.
No, really good points. And so to kind of dig in further to what you're mentioning. So, right. So as someone who's technically an apprentice and not quite licensed, I know you're trying to be as self-sufficient as possible, but there are just certain legal limitations that you have to being completely and utterly independent, which is you don't quite have your writing number yet.
Right.
So you do rely on me as your mentor or other mentors to, or even other licensed agents to sign off on your applications, right? To officially submit to the carrier. And then, so it would be tough, I think, if you were doing remote at this point, because there's just, you have to have some, ability to get in touch with your mentor. Also, another thing, and this is a perfect example, this morning we had a little bit of technology issues with one of the portals. He was trying to submit an application or start one in one of the insurance carriers portals, and there was an issue with password, username, some issue he couldn't get in. I just said, come on over to my computer, we'll do it together.
Right.
And it was easy to do that. Whereas if you were
yeah.
remote, if either one of us was remote or both, it wouldn't have gone as smoothly as it did.
No,
Right.
no, not at all.
So, and that client was, I would say, pretty demanding. She wasn't the
She
easiest
was.
to work with as it was. So it was kind of like, that was all we needed was technology
Yeah.
issues,
Right.
portal issues to add to that.
Dead
Because
air.
it's very possible. And I've had it where there've been technology issues and a client will hang up, or that's just kind of the one out they needed to kind of second guess
Correct, yeah.
doing it, or it's their excuse to get off the line. And so it was pretty quick for us to figure out a solution and make it
She was
pretty
patient.
smooth.
She
She was more
She
patient
hadn't
than
been
I
in the
suspected.
past dealings.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it was quick thinking, and
Absolutely.
we just figured it out and got it taken care of. And it was 2 apps, which could have taken twice as long to try
Correct.
and figure out the technology issue there. So that was definitely one benefit of working here.
Absolutely.
Also another, and right, and then to touch on that, you said it's a more structured environment, right? Because you have to physically come somewhere at a specific time. Lunches are kind of more structured because you're, seeing people kind of follow the same structure, right? Typically there's a short break in the morning, short break in the afternoon. Lunch is there's a couple of hour windows where most people are going to lunch. So you kind of follow the herd, right?
Right.
When you're just naturally, when you're here physically in the office. So it's
Right.
easy to do. And right, I think if you have to know yourself, right? You have to know what are your strengths and what are your limitations. And you have to know whether you really truly do need that structure of being in the office. I know that sometimes working remotely can be, a lot of temptation, but if you just know yourself and if you know that you just couldn't, make yourself adhere to a certain kind of schedule,
Right.
then
It doesn't
working,
work.
working in the office, you have to just admit that you need more structure, and that's okay. That's okay. That's why a lot of people, even some tenured agents like Brad, he chooses to work in the office because he likes the structure of it and he likes the camaraderie. Because I've worked remote and it can be a little lonely, right? It
Yeah.
really can. It
Sure
can be
can.
very isolating. So that can, you have more camaraderie, more, build, I think, stronger bonds with your fellow agents and your mentors and things like that. So those are for sure some positive things.
I think one more thing that we hadn't touched on is when you're here, you get a feel for everybody's style and stuff, and I think it makes it easier if, like, for instance, I'm have done some work on advantage plans for clients of one of our agents that they've had a supplement plan for a long time, but they just really want to know about the other plans. And so we've been able to work back and forth somewhere. I do tell them, that they're how much out of pocket and how to do the math and figure out money wise, which one would be better, which we all know is always the supplement plan pretty much. But the fact that there was someone here that she can have discussed, because she doesn't do our other agent, she doesn't do any advantage plans.
Right.
And that way there is someone, and it's not
Looking.
sending them off away from our company at where they might get sort of tricked into it's not really tricked, but I mean I'm happy to do that and research and help our clients, but then at least there's somebody. But anyway, just having another agent where, if I can't handle this or I don't know these questions, I have someone I can send it to or ask and get on the line with us or whatever. I mean, just
Right.
having that.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah, and in your situation, you were the in-office agent and the other agent was the remote agent.
right.
So I'm sure that there was a little bit of a challenge there trying to get the information communicated, maybe a little bit. But
Yeah.
as opposed to if you had both physically been in the office, it would have been probably a little
Snap, snap,
easier
snap.
just to kind of have a quick huddle about it
Yeah.
and do a quick, and each of you could have a feel for each other and what the kind of agreement would be.
Right.
If there was a split or kind of a little more communication about the, her prepping you for the type of client she is and what
Right.
relationship they have. So, so I'm sure it would have been even a much smoother process too. If
Right.
you'd
And
both
she
been in the
maybe
office.
could have even just transferred the call when they were asking about it.
Yeah.
You know.
And I
So-
think sometimes even clients like that, you know, when you're handing someone off to another agent, that, she's just right here. She's just right. We're all here together. You know, it
Right.
kind of adds to that you're a human, you're
Right.
a real person. You're not just
Right.
somebody working in another
randomly
state.
calling in,
Mhm.
Right,
calling
from one
them.
state to the other, or one country to another. Like you're dealing with real people here.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes clients find that endearing, and
Mm-hmm.
they like that hey, you know what, if my agent was not here, well, somebody right next to her could just pick it up, and they're in physically the same office.
Right.
And I think it's just a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling for the clients.
Mhm.
Yeah, me too.
And then another benefit is you get to show off your wardrobe, your fancy new shoes.
Right.
If you got them, show them. You know, you can do a little fashion
dance.
show.
Yeah, yeah.
Fashion show, you know. And actually, you know, it's funny. I think it's so my personal experience was when I was in mortgage lending, I was working in the office, and so I had to dress up. There was this, you know, I was a client-facing person. I saw people every day, and so I had to dress the part and accordingly. And then I got into insurance. It was a little more cash. That's fine. But then we went to remote, where then it was for 2 years, yoga pants, yoga pants, yoga pants, and flip flops, right? And so you kind of it does mess with your psyche a little bit as far as when you're dressed up. You've got this confidence about you. You know, you're feeling good. You're looking good, dressing sharp.
Right,
You
you're
know,
prepared.
got the clicking those heels on the sidewalks there,
Right.
and the floors. And so it was a different mentality. Just the act of getting up and getting dressed and out the door, looking sharp or whatever, you know, and know that people, they hear that you're a professional, but they also see that you look like the professional that you are. There was, you know, it was easier to convey that you're the authority on whatever it is to the client, and then to your colleagues as well. So
Right,
there
dress
was
the part.
that, right.
Yep.
And especially, and if you're into fashion, you know, that can be something that's like kind of just more interesting aspect you're adding for your day, you know. So
Absolutely.
you know, and then too, it feels good. Like when you're
Yep.
dressed up or
Right.
something, your hair looks nice. Sometimes,
Sure.
oh, you look nice. It's like, oh, it's a nice little ego boost.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that. That
Right.
never, a little boost in the ego never hurt anybody, right?
Absolutely.
So that's also one
Right.
benefit. So now let's touch on just a few maybe downsides to working in the office. Maybe one of them might be, well, if you don't get along with all or a particular colleague and you have to see them every day, day in and day out, sometimes that can drag you down or kind of affect your mood, you know. So
Right.
sometimes that could be it. Although, you know, if you get along with your colleagues, it can be a boost. But sometimes, you know, typically, and we've all been at an employer, you know, where we worked at, that there was somebody that kind of just got our goat or was just for some reason made you the target of their ire for some reason.
Whatever.
It's just going to be you. They just decided it's going to be you, and they're just going to try to make your life
Right.
miserable, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to, you know, work in the office, that can be a downside, especially if management doesn't do something about it. Although,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
we've had it in the past where there's been an agent who was a trouble agent, and thank goodness the agents that were affected by it negatively came to me and nipped it in the bud.
Right.
But, you know, that one agent was, you know, roasting up a bunch of feathers, and unbeknownst to me or the mentors, and then thank goodness they came to me and we nipped it in the bud. But that could have been that one agent that was causing all those problems.
Right.
Could have been a reason why others didn't want to maybe work here anymore, want to come, you know, dread
Right.
coming in the office every day. And I would have
Yeah.
hated that.
That's
So-
one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Let me add to that. You know, not that it's a negative experience, but I get along with everybody here. But it tends to get a
Really?
little loud. Well, you know, 90%. You know, but it does get loud to where it's a little difficult to hear, and then it kind of bleeds over into your conversation. So they think you're having a party. It's not a party.
Right.
It's just some people talk loud,
Mhm.
you know, and they're motioning and walking around because we all wear headsets. So you're trying to have the conversation, and you got people pacing behind you,
Mhm.
talking, because I have two of them that pace behind me. So it tends to throw me off a little bit. That is the downside, but that's just, I think, more of just where I'm at
Mhm.
area wise. But other than that, you know, I get it. You know, you want to have a great experience here. You want it to have some structure. You want to see the benefits of what the day is going to play out. You want to see how things are trending. You want to hear the voicemails. You want to hear everybody's approach. And, you know, it's been a great learning experience. Case in point, there was a lady that Victoria was, I had Victoria step in on that call that took probably, I swear, probably at least 20 approaches to put the deal together.
Mhm.
We're talking at least
Wow.
20.
Took days.
You know, so we're chasing folks, so is everybody else, but to ask for the business, I couldn't have done that remote.
Mhm.
That would have to be
Right.
here.
Yeah.
You know, it was super tough. And then we got this person, not we, got this person to say yes. But it took a lot of effort. It wasn't just here it is, it's laid out, it makes sense, let's move forward. No, we want to, why? Okay, this. It was a mountain of obstacles till they finally, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do this. After they blamed it on their spouse, and I'm not, you know, I need to get him. He's in the room, you can hear him in the whole 9 yards. And then, you know what? I'll just go ahead and do that. It was fantastic. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but to speak to that, right when it's loud, other people are loud, or the client hears other people.
Right.
That lady that we closed
She was
today,
very,
she would read to me her personal information, but when I said, oh, well, let me repeat that back, she said, please don't do that because I can tell there's other people around you that I can hear.
right.
I said, oh, you got it. Go ahead and I won't
Absolutely.
repeat it.
I
You
never
just
thought of that.
I didn't either. It just made her uncomfortable. But you know what? I addressed. I said, okay, that's fine. I won't read anything out. I'll just have you repeat it back to me.
Right.
But yeah, that could have been a deal breaker for someone.
That was very. She was a very intense person.
She was. And also, I remember when I first started here, even though it was just me and Frank and Steven and Jacob mostly, even before you got on, Penny.
Right, I was a
It
couple
was
days behind you.
so loud because Frank was next to me. He was
Oh yeah.
his angled in. Steven was across. He was angled towards me, and their voices carry, and they were just shooting at me.
Yeah.
And I just, it was so hard for me to hear. I had to get noise canceling headset, and I just had to sometimes just hold my headphones, so
Same
tight,
here.
and just be yelling because I was rivaling their voices that they carry so far.
Right.
And then, of course, they're both they're standing up over their monitors, and their
Right.
voices are just like,
Yeah.
I'm like, gee, it was such a challenge, but that was a challenge of working here in the office, but we made it through.
Right.
So, but I definitely feel like the positives outweigh the negatives.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I do too.
Yeah. So let's talk about now some benefits to working remote. So Penny, you and I both have experience working remote in the insurance industry. So what would you say was a benefit of working remotely? that you
Well,
recall?
on the easy to name off right off the bat would be no drive time, no
Mhm.
spending gas money or
No
whatever.
wear and tear on the car. It's
Right.
minimal. Mhm.
Exactly. So that right off the bat, and it is comfortable wearing your yoga
And the
pants.
jammy jams.
I
Yeah.
didn't have a jammy day. I didn't do that.
I had
However,
quite a few.
however, I mean being able to dress all relaxed and so on. But as Mike mentioned, you have to have that self-discipline. And then I think for a lot of agents trying to work remote, then they've also gone through the having kids at home, or maybe their spouse also working remote at home. And then I think it gets really challenging.
Yes.
I mean, even more challenging to stay on your disciplined path because you have all these other forces trying to, mom.
Yeah. No, you're
or your
right.
husband, what are we having for lunch? Or,
Right.
you know,
I'm like,
whatever.
really, right now?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. You know, too busy to worry about that. You'll have to
Yeah.
tell me what we're having for lunch or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, there can be a lot of outside factors then. If
Right.
I was fortunate the time I was working remote, then I was home alone. And so I was able to stick on the path and just do it.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge of being at home, and like we were saying before, you have to know yourself, because then some people can easily get off track at home.
It can be easy.
Yeah.
No, I know what you're talking about. Distractions. Sometimes they can be worse than an office, because sometimes your significant other, or your kids, or your animals, your pets, they just assume you're there. They just assume you're free to ask any random question.
They make these little plexiglass things to put your keyboard under, because of so many people that have cats that will go lay on their keyboard and be pressing buttons, and you're trying to move your cat.
Yeah. So I recall some very vivid distractions I would have. So my boyfriend, we worked opposite schedules, and he worked at night. So as soon as I was clocking in, he was going to sleep, and he snored so loud sometimes. I would just like be distracted by the snoring when I was talking to my client. When I would have to be on the phone call, or I'd pause it, or I'd mute myself, and I'd go and just like give him a little kick and be like, turn over or something, because all I can hear is you're choking, you're snoring. Or sometimes my boys, they'd get in a little mischievous mood, and they'd come and be like, try to tell me a joke when I'm in the middle of something. Or my aunt, later on when I started caring for my aunt, sometimes she just, during a Zoom one-on-one with my supervisor, so just like wander into the screen and not understand what was going on.
Right. She just didn't know. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine.
He'd be like, oh, do you have to tend to something? Like, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine.
So, those were some distractions that I wouldn't have had to deal with if I was physically in the office. But have either of you worked remote in previous jobs? Yeah, it takes a lot of structure for sure. You can make your own routine, which is nice. If you're going to get your coffee, maybe it's brewing while the morning meeting is going on. It's easy to multitask. I remember, I got so much stuff done. I'd get laundry done. I'd get folded, washed, dried, and folded, because at lunch or in the morning, I would just throw a load in the washer. At lunch, I'd change it over. And my afternoon break, I'd just like fold it up real quick. Or, if like maintenance had to come in to get things done, I could be there to show them what it was.
Pull in your packages when they actually get delivered.
Yeah, it was kind of nice in that way. And then, of course, you can just wear whatever you want, typically from here down, depending on if you have Zoom meetings. Or if you don't have any visuals at all, you have to worry about hair, makeup, nothing. Man, my makeup lasted so long, and my hair products, they just lasted so long. I wasn't burning through them like I do now, So, which was really nice. And then the gas, I probably, hopefully no mechanics hear this, but I don't think I got an oil change for like a year, because I hardly drove my car.
It wasn't, you hadn't gotten to the 5,000 miles or whatever
or
it is.
if it's the synthetic, that didn't drive enough miles to even warrant that. And it was nice. The gas was expensive, and so not having to put miles on my car, wear and tear, and then spend gas money. I could almost essentially mark out gasoline from my budget. It was that minimal, which was nice. So at the time, I'd considered upgrading to a bigger car, and it was like, there's no point, because I don't even hardly drive the one I have. So I just kept it. So that was one benefit for sure. I think working from home is good for more tenured agents. A lot of tenured agents will elect to work from home because they have their own book of business that they've accumulated over the years, that they can call their own clients. Sometimes when you work remotely. Sometimes, depending on what agency you're working for, some of the leads cost nothing, and some cost some
Right.
amount of money. And so, when you have a big book of business to draw from, these are your existing clients. You're reshopping them. You're not having to worry about paying for new leads or searching out new leads. The time and effort and the money to do that. So that's a benefit for more tenured agents that we have. Also, working for anywhere that you want instead of being tied down to a physical location, because we have a remote agent who works in Florida, and she gets to live there, close to family, wherever she chooses. Whereas if you're in the office, you have to kind of decide how far out you want to live. If you're considering new, residents, you could have to consider the drive time, the gas that it takes to get here and back, traffic, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And is there something affordable or something that you care to live in, that's in this decent range, mile and distance wise from your employer.
Yeah.
So that can be, a little bit of kind of a hurdle there. Also, when you work remotely, depending on what type of agency you work for, I know if you work for this agency, you can pretty much make your own schedule. So you're not bound to the 8 to 5 schedule. You can work as you like or when you like, because really it's kind of all dependent on you, right? That's a benefit, that you're not just held to the certain schedule. And then the lack of structure actually works better for some people. We have I think a father-son team that the father, I think, is partially retired, semi-retired. I think that's the situation. And the son kind of has taken over his book of business and kind of, I don't know his situation, but they kind of work as a team. And, so they're both, not having to work full-time 8 to 5 schedule. They can it's more flexible for them, and that works for them. So that's also a benefit. There also, so we said less money on gas, wear and tear, vehicle expenses, less money on wardrobe. I made the mistake of thinking, I guess I'll just work from home forever, because it seemed to be that's the way everything was trending.
Right.
And then it turned out the company that I worked for, they were doing so hot. So then I came to work for this agency, which I love. And then I had to, because I had donated all my clothes to, all my really nice mortgage lending clothes to, I think we talked about this before. It's a women's program
where they help women find jobs and dress
dress for success. I think is what it's called. Yes, I donated all my clothes and my nice shoes there, and then I had to come into the office, and I was like, oh crap, I'm gonna need to kind of build up my wardrobe again. Right. So, because yoga pants are frowned upon here. It's not office attire.
Right.
So anyway, so that's kind of been an expense that I didn't have to deal with when I was at home. So I can just wear whatever. And then it's more relaxed. It can be more relaxed, especially if you're the type of person who doesn't really need much supervision.
Right.
That's a way to do it. But there's upsides and downsides to that too. So, but unless you guys have any other input, I think we touched on some pretty big positive and negatives from working from home and working in the office. So you just kind of have to decide what works for you. You really have to look inside yourself. It's easy to say, remote, we're all remote all day long. Excellent. But that really, if you take a look at yourself and you know yourself and you ask those hard questions, really is remote the best for you? And if it still is, hey, go for it. But I think whatever you do, go full force, 100%, whichever one you're going to do. Or if a hybrid schedule works better for you, talk to your mentor, talk to your supervisor, and work that out so that you are putting yourself in the best habitat, I guess, the best, setting to be successful, whatever that may be. Yeah. So I think that's the main goal here of working the positives and negatives of these situations. So anyhow, come see us if you want to talk about working remote, Medicare Gurus, talk to one of the mentors or Frank, the CSO, about that, and we're happy to have you and work something out. But this has been Victoria Lewis with Medicare Gurus, and say hi to your mom for me.